Welcome to Demond Does, your nerd space safe place. I am Demond, father of two, husband of one, and leader of this here Demodcast. Now, before we get started, go ahead and like, share, and subscribe. Also, leave a review on your favorite podcast app so more can join the conversation. My next guest has published count them, three poetry collections. Been annoyed by Hollywood remakes, like a lot of us, and is living an anime lifestyle. Ladies and gentlemen, and all across the spectrum, give it up for Enoch! Hello, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good, man. How you?
I'm well. Thank you for taking time out to talk to a perfect stranger.
Yeah, no problem, man. I always appreciate people reaching out to jump on and talk nerd culture and creativity. It's always a vibe.
The more nerds that can connect and build community, the better off I think we'll all be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Before we get into the 6 questions, where would you like to be found on the internet?
I have 2 Instagram accounts. One is like my personal account, which is at Enoch the Poet on Instagram. And then the second one is the Instagram account for the manga that I write, which is at Immortal Manga on Instagram. And those are the 2 best places to contact me, follow anything I'm doing, or reach out, so on and so forth.
Actually, before we get into the 6 questions, let's talk Immortal Manga real quick.
For sure.
I haven't read all of them yet, but I am looking forward to it. I read the first one, and I just want to give you your props. It's amazing. I've really enjoyed it so far.
Thank you.
Enoch, are you ready to answer the 6 questions?
Absolutely.
Question number 1. When did you know you wanted to be a manga author? Mangaka.
Before I got into like poetry and writing as like my primary art form, I used to draw. And I feel like I was drawing from like a very early age, like kindergarten on forward. And once I got good enough, I say around like middle school, I would get sheets of blank computer paper and I would just staple them together. And then I would draw out comics like paneling, full on story and everything. And I had like a bunch of different like concepts and all of that. And anime has always been like a large part of my creative journey. What inspires me also, like, it's a large part of like the media I consume. Like I would say a solid like 60% of what I watch is either anime or like Eastern media in general. Getting into middle school, I started like reading more manga intentionally. And I was like, yo, I feel like this is where I'm trying to go with my art. And my ultimate goal back then was to be an animator. But then 8th grade, I discovered poetry, and then that like it kind of derailed everything. And we could definitely talk about that more as well. But like I never lost like my passion for story creating and my passion for manga, my passion for anime. And so once I got into adulthood and felt like really comfortable with my writing ability, I kind of just like circled back around to it. And a lot of things like in life come full circle for me. Like I'm very blessed to have a lot of completion moments in my life in different ways. And I feel like I'm always in a situation where like as long as I'm doing what feels aligned, I come back to whatever I'm supposed to come back to. And I feel like manga was that same thing. And so in 2015, I was like, all right, I'm about to start trying to create a manga again, but just like this time strictly from the writing side, because I am hella rusty with drawing. I'm not as good as I used to be. And to get to the level I would want to be to draw, I don't got the patience for that. So started writing again, and here we are.
You have said that your personal journey in life has influenced your manga.
Yeah, absolutely. I am a person who lives with bipolar disorder, and I'm also on the spectrum. And my life has been very steeped in a process of like mental and emotional well-being. I got diagnosed with bipolar like at a pretty young age. I was in like fifth grade, which is like very young compared to some other folks. And so I have a very, very like supportive and loving mother. And when they came to her with this information, she was like, she is a big believer in like me having my own voice. She's been that way ever since I was young. And so she was like, is this something you want to try to figure out like as a family, or do you want to be in therapy, or do you want to be medicated? Like, what do you want to do? And at a young age, I didn't really have no concept of therapy. So I was like, oh, I want to try and figure it out like with just us, you know what I'm saying? I definitely would have a different answer now, like looking back, as like someone who was actively in therapy at that time, like fifth grade me, I was like, I want to try and figure it out. That like opened me up really early to a lot of mental health practices, a lot of mental health like language, and so I had like really early exposure to that. And then, of course, like as I grew older and had more adverse situations, it became more and more important for me to be invested in this. And with Immortal Dark specifically, around the time when I lived with my great grandmother for a majority of my life, and when I was born, she was 70, right? So like so I'm like growing up with a like really really old guardian, pretty much. And so by the time I got to high school, her dementia like really started to set in, and then my mom and sister ended up moving in with us. Even before the dementia, there were a lot of things my great grandmother did that were not healthy emotionally for the primary family, right? She had really good intentions. I do genuinely believe that. But like at the end of the day, intention doesn't change impact, right? And once the dementia hit, a lot of her interactions with us got more volatile, got more dysfunctional. And that caused like a lot of pain for me, a lot of frustration. And when she passed in 2016, there was just a lot of things I felt like I didn't receive accountability for. And that was just like really major to me. And I sat with that for a lot of years, was in therapy about that for a lot of years. And a lot of Immortal Dark is centered on this concept of like, what do I do with my grief? What do I do with my frustration? What do I do with my anger when the person I need accountability for is like no longer present? Because that was my situation. I needed to understand that my granny understood the negative impact she had on all of us. And she passed without the wherewithal to be able to do that. And so it's like, well, her passing doesn't make the stuff disappear in me, right? So it's like I had to figure out things, and there are still things I'm figuring out. And a lot of the writing process of the manga has also helped me grapple with some of those things, because the difference between like the lived experience and the writing experience is, in the lived experience, I'm only responsible for myself. In the writing experience, I'm responsible for all the characters, right? And so the character, I have to have a level of investment in the characters that cause harm the same way I do in the characters that are harmed. And having to write Nico's father, which is like the person in the manga who has passed that Nico hasn't received accountability from, it's given me a lot more capacity to have empathy for my great grandmother, because I'm having to contextualize like how someone can be harmful to a family and still have good intentions.
Question number 2. What do you wish you had known when you first started out? Now, before you answer this, one thing you said that really struck me that really excited me about again about talking to you is you had said that there is no blueprint, and that just that like a light bulb went off. Would you still say that, or is there something else that would be more accurate now?
Yeah, I would still say there's no blueprint. Primarily because like, and this is also something that like really was solidified for me like when I moved to Philly and like was active in the poetry. I'm still active in the poetry community, just less active than before. But like with a lot of artistry, I feel like we like to engage with it like there's a blueprint because it helps us feel like we have direction. It helps us, it helps take some accountability off of us for the decisions we make, right? It helps us feel better about like the hard times because there's like a light at the end of the tunnel when there's a blueprint, right? But realistically, if you canvas folks who are in the creative space, even ones who are like being creative for a living, film producers, other comic artists, da 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 da. Everybody's story is so drastically different, right? And another thing that I've found is like one of the reoccurring themes that comes up when I'm talking to folks who are in these different industries. And that's like on all levels, both like on my like grassroots level and on like a larger Hollywood level. One of the things that always comes up is like, I thought I needed to do it this way, and this is how it happened. And to me, that's like pure evidence of like, if there was a functional blueprint, a large portion of the successful people would have the same story, right? In terms of the process. But the one thing that seems the same is that there is no process. It's just like how it happened for them. And knowing that, for me at least, actually is like really stress relieving because essentially if there is no blueprint, that also means that I'm never behind, right? I'm just where I am and that's where I'm supposed to be. And there's nothing for me to catch up to. Like there's not a benchmark I need to have except for the benchmark I set for myself. And even that should have some flexibility, right? I'm a very spiritual person. And so I'm a believer like that I could make all the decisions I want to make. Ultimately, what's always going to win out is what like the universe or the governing spirit wants from me. And sometimes that is separate from what I want for myself, because sometimes what I want for myself is not about my well-being, right? Like sometimes we put too much stake in like what we know as human beings. And like this idea that everything I choose is always going to be with my best interest in mind, that's not true. That's just not true. You know what I'm saying? And like, as someone who is a recovering self-abandoner, I know for a fact I have chosen things historically that are not in my best interest. It's just what I convinced myself was my best interest. And professional work doesn't feel no different to that than me. So yeah, I would still say there's no blueprint. But the one thing I would say is like my answer to like what's something I wish I knew then that I know now. This is a very small thing, but it has changed my writing monumentally. There's this YouTube channel I follow, and I'm trying to remember her name. It's a white woman. She's like one of the only white women I trust, besides Brene Brown. But she said that you should not have to insert conflict into a story. Conflict should always be a ripple effect of your main character's choices. And so she breaks down like essentially, there's things that happen that lead to a deciding point for your protagonist. And whatever they decide in that point is what creates the conflict, the rise and fall, and then it rises into another decision point. And that drastically shifted the way I crafted stories because my writing started to become more organic. So it's like, okay, I don't have to like rack my brain about like what's gonna be the conflict and what's gonna put these characters at odds. It's just like, what are their personalities? What is the overarching story? And what's a decision that Nico will have to make that will then rub against all these other characters that I've included in this situation. And it made writing like so much easier for me.
Some of my favorite shows, or shows I've watched a lot of, or shows that have lasted a long time, it felt like I'll use Modern Family as one of them. That was the first one I thought of because my wife and I talk about it all the time. We know the characters, we know their quirks or whatever. Then they drop this insane situation in there, and everybody watching it knows what everybody's reaction is going to be. It's just a matter of how it all pans out. So that's interesting, like that you put into words, like how that works. That's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great example too. Like because it's like the knowing doesn't change the interest in watching it play out. Like you're still engaged. Like you could see it and be like, oh, I know he's gonna say this, and then he says it, and it's like cool, but I'm still here though, because at any point in time, especially like with like very human centered writing, at any point in time, a character can break their archetype because that's what we do in real life. You know what I'm saying? Like my partner, she may expect me to say a thing because I've been saying it for years. And then there's just one time where I done felt different. And it's like I say something unexpected and she like, whoa. Oh, all right, okay, let's see what this is about. You know? So yeah, absolutely.
Question number 3. What is your go-to order at your favorite hometown restaurant?
Oh, okay. So I have a gluten allergy called dermatitis herpetiformis, which means that when I eat gluten, I break out in like open sores. It's really horrible. So I've been gluten free for going on 4 or 5 years now. But luckily, I live in a foodie city. Philadelphia has really great food options, also a lot of great food options for me. So my go-to, even though I'm not born and raised in Philly, like I'm originally from Wilmington, when you say hometown restaurant, I think of Philadelphia because like I feel like Philly has nurtured me in a way that I would not be who I am without my connection to Philadelphia and moving to Philly. So there's a restaurant called Front Street Cafe on Front Street in Philadelphia. They have amazing gluten-free options. One of the things I really like to order from there that is absolutely delicious is they have these chicken thighs that were brined in apple cider. And they're so good. They're so good. It's so delicious, yo. So that's my go-to order.
That sounds delicious.
If you're ever in Philadelphia, absolutely go to Front Street Cafe. You will not regret it.
How did you discover this delicacy?
Basically, like once I found out I had a gluten allergy, and I am a foodie. I love eating. I love cooking. It is like my second passion next to like writing. And so when I found out I had a gluten allergy, I was like, yo, I gotta figure out some way for this like not to disrupt my life. So I just went down a like rabbit hole, and shout out to being on the spectrum because I can like get really zoned in on something and absorb a lot of information quickly. So I just went down like a research rabbit hole of like, where can I eat and still feel like a quote unquote normal person? And Front Street Cafe like kept coming up. So I was like, yo, all right, I'm gonna go there. I went there. The food was phenomenal. And I have a rule that I have to eat at a place 3 times before I'm willing to recommend it. The 3 meals have to be good. If it's 2 out of 3, I might bring it up. If it's 1 out of 3, you're never going to know that I was there. And Front Street Cafe, they hit all 3, and then I kept going. In 4 years, I have never had a bad meal there, like ever. And they also refresh their menu yearly. So the apple cider brine thighs, that's like on their most recent menu. So I went there and I always read the menu just in case it's something new. And I was like, hold up, cider brine thighs. What's that? So I ordered it and it was hitting. It was too good. It was too good.
Between talking to you and Jillian, I had Blurred on the Street on a couple episodes ago. And between you and them, I'm like, man, I gotta get to Philly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. You will bring the whole family. Y'all will eat phenomenally.
Question number 4. What are you curious about?
Honestly, like I'm curious about life. My partner always jokes me, I really am like a curious tourist. Like I just have so much investment in random things. And I think part of it is like being on a spectrum, I do not easily understand like human emotion, sarcasm, like all empathy, like all of these things are like things I have built up in my toolkit over the years. Like I understand them now, but it's definitely not like readily accessible to me the way it is like some other people, right? And the way I have built up the toolkit to understand it is by studying people, is by asking a lot of questions, is by figuring out like, okay, where's that coming from and what's that and why are you doing this thing, and amassing all of that knowledge and research helps me organize the things in my mind so that when I'm in conversation, for example, and let's say somebody responds sarcastically, I can tell by the tone and the body language or like the context of what we're saying. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is that thing that people do. And then I can like file it in that. And it's the same with emotions. Like I am, along with like being a creative, I'm a trauma informed educator. And a lot of like the mental health field has helped me understand how to essentially like not be readily identifiable as being on the spectrum. Like if you know me, it's like really easy to tell because I have like all these quirks and stuff. But like if you're just like out and about and we're meeting on the street, you will assume that I'm just like a really attentive, neurotypical human being. But it's because of like all the mental health knowledge, it's because of like learning how trauma sits in the body, it's because of like my deep investment in understanding like the human condition. And so I guess to be even more specific, because life is kind of like a generic answer, I'm very curious about the human condition, like the state of being alive on this planet and like what that does to us, how we engage with it, and all of that like human existence stuff is like my jam.
How does your attentiveness to people help you develop your characters and help with your writing?
Wow, great question. Great question. Both with my poetry and with the manga, I've come to realize like over the years that I really am writing about the experience of like the spiritual experience of being like a black human being, right? Like humanism is like at the core of both like how I function in the world and like what I focus on in my writing. Like I love gray area and I love for characters to have nuance and to deviate from the perceived archetypes. And I also love for a villain to not really be a villain, right? Because like there are people who do really evil things in life. Like that is objectively true, right? And I think more often than not, a villain or an antagonist, I should say, to be more specific, in our actual like lived experiences are more oftentimes like people whose life choices, free will, their chaos rubs up against our chaos in a way that's like combative, right? Like we can think about multiple people who have been antagonists in our lives that aren't necessarily bad people. We just not on the same wavelength, right? And that creates a conflict. And I love for like my stories to carry that energy as well of like, yo, this is not the oh I gotta destroy the world. Like, no, because that's not how most of us function. Like it's really a human being who has some experiences and those experiences led them to adopt a specific belief system or mode of functioning that turns out to not be beneficial for a variety of people who are involved in the story. And so yeah, it's helped me like really add a lot of color to a lot of the characters and like make characters that even if you don't like them, I feel like you'll understand them though. It's like, yo, I wouldn't do that, but I get it. I see.
I like seeing characters where you say, well, I really don't like what you did there, but I see how you got there.
Yeah, yeah.
Question number 5. What should I ask you that I didn't know enough to ask? You own your own publishing, correct? Is that right?
Yes.
What was the most surprising thing you learned in this process? And how have your skills as an artist helped you be a business owner? Because they seem like, on the surface at least, two very different ventures. How do you marry those?
Yeah. So one thing that was surprising to me, honestly, was how easy it is to start a publishing company. And I guess this maybe be like, might be poverty, trauma, or whatever. Like, I thought it was about to be like an endeavor to do, but it is like one of the simplest things. So, literally, to start a publishing company, I had to write out the business plan because when you apply for your business license, that's like something they ask for sometimes. So I wrote out a business plan of like what the mission of the publishing company was, what the vision was, how we would function, price points, all of that stuff. That was all like self-created things, and of course, I ran it by like a lot of my artist homies, a lot of my poet homies at the time to see like, does this sound like good deals and so on and so forth. Because I didn't want to just use my own experience as somebody looking to get published as the barometer. And they were like, nah, this sounds solid. Boom, boom, boom. Outside of getting the business plan, make a logo. Luckily, I had a lot of experience in Photoshop, so I just made the logo myself. So that's money I got to save. After the business plan and making the logo, I just had to file for the LLC, which like I used this Black-owned company called Common Ground Management. It was like $250 to file, which like was way cheaper than I thought it would be. After that, I got like an EIN number, and then I had to make a website. Like the only requirement to be established as a business after filing was to have a business bank account. I chose Citizens Bank because they don't have a dollar minimum on their business account. And as a startup, I was like, that's great. So I had a bank account that I started with Citizens free of charge with no dollar minimum. And then the publishing company was solidified. In order to publish books, outside of like the programs and all of that stuff that you need to like format stuff, on the legal side of things, all you really need is an ISBN number, which you can buy in bulk from myidentifiers.com. You can get one ISBN for $125, and then you can get 10 for two something, I believe. I can't fully remember the pricing, but like fairly cheap given all things considered. And you just fill your information in on an ISBN number, you assign it to the book, and then you can upload that book anywhere. And I was like, wow. I talked to my homies about starting a publishing company, and then it was done like within 2 weeks. And it was like, this is wildly easy, which like made me start thinking about like how easy it is to start a business. Now, I'm not talking about the sustaining of it and the expanding of it or none of that, but just like the starting process is way easier than I feel like we have been led to believe. And I think some of that is by design. But yeah, that was very eye-opening for me. Very, very eye-opening for me. Then in terms of like how to bridge the gap between the two things. So because I was an artist who was making work that I wanted to be published, and I was running into the barriers that led me to starting the publishing company, right? Like the long wait times and the submission deadlines and the submission fees, and like poetry specifically, there's like a lot of bureaucracy with publishing and a lot of like economic barriers with publishing, a lot of like long response wait times. And so honestly, my artist experience was what informed what procedures I came up with for the business. because my goal was like to be a business that wasn't putting people through the things I was experiencing. And this even holds for like the job I have. I'm a program director for a nonprofit called Artwell. I started with Artwell teaching in 2018. And then now I'm program director, which I feel very equipped to do because I used to be a teaching artist for the organization, right? And so there's a way in which I can approach it that somebody who hasn't done that role might not be able to approach it from, because I know firsthand the experience of like going through it on the ground level. And so yeah, there's a way in which like I don't think personal and professional is separate. I don't think art and business is separate. Same way I don't think science and spirituality is separate. I think they actually go hand in hand. And the more we try to like separate them, the more we create like cognitive dissonance in ourselves. And then we wonder like why we feel horrible about these things. And it's like, well, because you removed yourself from it. So of course it doesn't, you know what I'm saying, feel good. Like you have to be rooted in the thing for it to be what it's supposed to be in a healthy way, at least.
Question number 6. If you could create a new holiday, what would it commemorate?
I have a thing where I don't think about none of my answers beforehand because I like try to be as genuine as possible. But I definitely was like, this is one of my favorite questions that I've been asked in general. Because like I don't like capitalism, surprise, surprise. And I feel like most of the American holidays are misrepresentations, right? Especially when we think about like the large, like the two biggest ones, right? Thanksgiving is a commemoration of genocide, and Christmas, if you believe in Jesus, we are celebrating this man's birthday at the wrong day, right? Which is like, none of us would like that. I was born July 5th. If somebody threw me a birthday party in February, I'm gonna be like, what are you doing? Right. And it's all like consumerism, you know what I'm saying? And so I don't really enjoy celebrating these holidays. And one of the things I always talk to my partner about is like, I want us to have like our own holidays. They can happen on the same day, but just be about something different. So if I could have my own holiday to commemorate something, I feel like I would have a holiday to commemorate the contributions of the Harlem Renaissance. Because I feel like there's so much, especially like me having poetry as one of my artistic mediums. There's so much that that time period offered up to us that like ripple effects through our creative language as Black folks in a way that I feel like is deserving of a holiday. You know what I'm saying? And it could be hella festive, like we could gear up in Harlem Renaissance attire and have a juke joint party type vibe and like do all the things just to like pay homage to all the creativity that bubbled out of that space and time and like the lasting ripple effects that it has on us.
What day would you sell, or what week, or like what time of year?
I want to say I would do it sometime in April because April is National Poetry Writing Month. And I would ideally any Black holiday I would love to not be in February because I just be tired of the whole like trying to smush all of Blackness into this like 28 days. It's like bro, I'm Black 24/7. So I should be celebrating my Blackness in different avenues 24/7, right? And like I can definitely say even as someone who grew up in like an economically under-resourced space, an economically disadvantaged space, has been through adverse experiences, so on and so forth, I still am happy more days than I am not. And I have depression, right? And it's like, even with that, right? Like realistically, and I talk to my homies about this, even though I can draw the through lines to like how something adverse that happened in my life can tie to structural oppression and all of these things, at the end of the day, still, like, and this is not to say like structural oppression doesn't have an impact because we all understand that it does. I'm just saying, like, for me, being Black is not daunting. It's not burdensome. I don't even feel like the whole I gotta perform twice as good like thing, like I don't even subscribe to that. If I have to perform twice as good to have value, that is an indicator of a space I don't need to be in, right? It's not an indicator that I need to work harder. You know what I'm saying? And like, there's been so much that we've like perpetuated to ourselves in the name of attaining like whitehood. And it's like, I don't care about none of that. I am trying to be as productively black as possible. I don't need white privilege. I don't even want white adjacent power, right? I'm not trying to rule over anybody. I'm not trying to oppress anybody. And all of the power systems that are in place lead to that funnel. If there's a blueprint for anything, there's a blueprint for oppression. Absolutely, right? And so I'm just like, yeah, let's have it in a month that's not February, and let's enjoy it, and let's feel great about being black, and let's feel positive about being black, and let's be excited to wake up and go to sleep black. Even with all the things that come to it, there are also a lot of really, really beautiful things about our existence that I think does get its time, and I think it should have more time. You know what I'm saying, for sure.
Why create?
Oh, oh, that's like an existential question. I think that creating is one of the most godlike abilities that we have as human beings. And to not utilize it, I feel like is in some form to hinder my lived experience, right? We have so many ideas and so much imagination like bubbling up inside of us. And so much of the society that we live in is about stifling or smothering that imagination, right? Because of what it can lead to, how advanced it can become, how much it can balance things out. And if I am someone who is geared towards living a full life, which I think most of us want to live a full life, right? Most of us want to feel good and feel happy. Most of us want to be successful. The way I understand how to access all of that is through creativity. And we engage with it all the time, and we don't even acknowledge the ways. Like I did a workshop for the school district last year, like towards the end of the year. And it was about like making more arts rich environments in our school system. And I asked people, you know, like, how many of y'all identify as artists? Maybe like 3 or 4 people raised their hand. It was like 20 people in the room. Then I'm like, you know, okay, how many of y'all identify as creative? A little more people raise their hand, right? So then I was like, how many of y'all have worried about a situation that didn't happen yet? Everybody raised their hand, right? How many of y'all have envisioned a life with a partner that you weren't married to? Everybody raised their hand. Both of those examples, as concrete as they may feel to people, both involve creativity and imagination. To worry about a problem that hasn't occurred is literally me fabricating a reality, right? And I'm fabricating it with such detail that it feels real and I have an emotional response in my body that causes concern, right? Being in relationship with somebody and envisioning a life that hasn't happened yet. I'm thinking about kids. I'm thinking about what house we're going to live in. All of that is creativity. And then people will look at each other and be like, I'm not creative. That's crazy. Our brain, right, with neuroplasticity, we are hardwired to be creative. Neuroplasticity is really like, if I'm putting it in the simplest terms, is my brain's ability to create habits that don't yet exist, right? And it's the don't yet exist part that is the creativity. And so as soon as I think it up, I can start doing it. And if I start doing it regularly, it becomes habit. And now it's a normal thing. It's a part of my everyday life, but I had to think it up first in order for it to exist. And all of this is creation. Every religious text I know starts with creation, right? And like, that's like, no matter what language you speak, no matter what culture you're from, no matter who you pray to, even if you aren't spiritual, we understand that at some point there was nothing and then there was a bunch of things, right? And that time frame is whatever you want it to be, but that, and it's, none of us are here without creation. And so none of us continue to exist without creating. So I feel like it's a necessity.
Enoch, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, man. And I enjoyed this. I love your questions as well. Some of them are questions I haven't had before, and I've been on a good amount of interviews. So like, shout out to you for your creativity. You know what I'm saying? And coming through with some zingers. So yeah, thank you, man. I appreciate you.
Thank you once again for joining us, whether it's your first time or this time for the 6 questions. If you like the show, tell the world. Please jump on your podcast app and leave a 5-star review and tell your friends. That's the best way to grow the show, and more can join the conversation. And until next time, see it, hear it, speak it,